So, 1L1P.
And your last name is spelled?
Neumeyer. Neumeyer.
Okay, please speak loud. Always, even if you're going to get up, it's very important that you remain loud. Thank you.
So would you indicate where you're employed and what your job is?
I'm employed with the Armada Village Police Department.
And how long have you worked with Armada?
About 3 years now.
And what are your primary duties as an officer with Armada?
I'm a patrol officer, routine patrol.
Do you have a canine?
Yes, I do.
So are you also a canine officer?
Yes, I am.
Had you had prior law enforcement experience before the 3 years with Armada?
Yes, sir.
And where was that?
I was with the Macomb County Sheriff's Department.
And how many years were you with the Sheriff's Department?
35 years full time.
And were you a canine handler with the Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
Did you do some training in that regard?
Yes, I did.
Do you know a Deputy Cliff Morgan and as well as a son, Deputy Cliff Morgan?
Yes, I do.
Are those also canine handlers you work with at the Sheriff's Department?
Yes, they are.
And at some point in this case, did you encounter them?
Yes, I did.
All right. I'm going to take you back, though, to the beginning of your involvement in this case. On July 24th in the evening hours, do you recall if you were working on duty as a police officer?
Yes, I was.
And did you become aware of something that caused you to leave the police station and respond to a scene?
I was notified by the Sheriff's Department Dispatch Center that there was a deceased person on the Orchard Trail.
And the size of the Armada Police Department compared to the Sheriff's Department, how many officers were sitting in the department at the time that call came in?
One.
Who was that?
Me.
All right. When you got that call, what did you do?
Walked to my patrol car and then proceeded to the scene, which initially dispatch said was at Depot and Church Street in the south end of our village.
So that's initially where you responded to was Depot and Church?
Correct.
Could we put up, I think it's 33, the map with Olmo Road? Can you come down here, please? And I'm going to have you come down here for some of this testimony. Well,
I mean, you want to turn it a little bit?
I can turn it a little bit when those photographs come up. I appreciate that, Judge. I don't have to do, I guess.
We're going to have to move everybody to the right. That's all. That's the other option, is to move all of the audience to the right.
All right. I will make that clear before I display one of those photographs. Why don't you come on down here? Mr. Keith or Craig, if you could, I guess, zoom in more on the city that would include the area of Floral and the Trail and Depot. I just want them to see where he initially went. All right, can you point out then the area, is that on here?
It's a little bit to the south. This is Church Street right here.
Okay.
The Orchard Trail is
Just right about here. And is this actually Depot right here that kind of dead ends past the Depot?
Yes, it is.
All right, so you came down to this area right here?
Correct.
All right. And then, what did you do next in terms of responding to the scene?
I was following behind the ambulance that was also responding. We went to the east on Depot to approximately Floral, where there was some citizens basically flagging us or directing us down the trail.
And are you on foot at that point, or how are you moving?
I'm in a marked police car.
You're in a marked police car. You indicated there was an ambulance. Did the EMS technicians or firefighters, did they get out of the ambulance?
No, not at that point.
And what was the, I think you already indicated, but what were you responding to? What was the call?
The call was of a deceased person on the Orchard Trail, and they gave a location of Church and Depot.
So you met a number of individuals there.
Yes.
What then did you do?
They flagged us to the east, so we proceeded.
Use this pointer so the jurors in all the corners can see where you're pointing.
We went to this area here by Floral. There's a small ditch driveway kind of a thing here. We then got onto the actual trail itself and then proceeded to the scene. I didn't show all the way to the scene.
Can you show us where the scene was pointing?
Came along the trail this way, and the scene is approximately here.
All right. Now, we've referred or used the term earlier in the testimony about the Liberty Trail. Are you familiar with that trail?
Yes, I am.
And how would you describe what the Liberty Trail is?
The Liberty Trail isn't a formal trail that was built by the city or anything. It's just an area, like a path, if you will, that people in the subdivision use to make their way to the Orchard Trail.
And this is Liberty Street right here. It's actually labeled on the map.
Yes.
Do you see this sort of path coming down here?
Yes.
Is that the area of the Liberty Trail?
Correct, that's part of it.
Okay. So you get into this area, thereabouts, is that what you indicated?
Correct.
And what time of day was it?
It was approximately 8:19 p.m.
Did you notice anything before you went into the wooded area?
Witnesses there were pointing out an object to the north side of the trail. You could really not tell what it was
Okay.
at first.
Were you looking though?
Yes, yes, they were pointing it out.
Did you see a dog?
Yes,
Ultimately, was that dog, I don't want to say captured, but corralled and put onto a leash?
yes.
And if you saw the dog again, just very quickly, jury's already seen the picture. Could you put the picture of Penny up? That's the dog that you saw?
Yes, it is.
And that's actually a picture on the trail?
Yes, it is.
All right. I'm going to move the monitor because I'm going to show a couple of, well, I don't need to yet, actually. I'm going to show you while we're just standing here so I don't have you stand up and sit down and stand up and sit down. What I have marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 35 and ask if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
What is that?
That is a daytime photograph of the Orchard Trail.
And do you see, I guess for lack of a better word, a bit of a dirt opening out onto the Orchard Trail?
Yes.
Would that be the terminus of the Liberty Trail where it kind of intersects with the Potpourri Orchard Trail?
Yes.
And that's what you've already talked about. So what direction is this picture facing?
That picture is facing to the east.
So 35 is facing east. Before I move to admit it, I'm going to show you 36. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Do you see also more in the foreground, a little bit of the dirt trail coming out from Liberty Trail?
Yes, I do.
And what direction is that facing?
This is facing west.
So looking at these, would you agree to get a rough idea of the sight line from that location?
Yes.
I'll show these to you. One is facing east and one is facing west.
No problem, Your Honor.
Could you put up 35, which is facing eastbound, please? And would you just, for the jury's sake, point out where you see the Liberty Trail coming in? Okay. And could you put up 36 facing westbound, please? And where's the Liberty Trail for the jury? And the trail continues then in that direction, correct?
Yes.
Curving, same with the other way if you're looking eastbound.
Correct.
All right, now, I'm going to go a little bit out of order. And I'm going to move the monitor. They ask if you recognize and describe what this is.
This is a picture of, facing to the north, of the deceased from a distance.
Did you see this view that night?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to turn this just a little bit more. I'm going to move to, I'm going to show this to counsel. I want to make sure the juror back here can see. Can you give me a head nod if you can see it? Okay. He indicated this was facing to the north. Can't see, I'll move back a little more. I'm just trying to accommodate the parties as well, Judge. I know you've already given your ruling.
on.
All right.
Mr. Daly,
Yes?
There's a screen reflections.
Yeah, I'm not sure how else to display this. I need to show them these pictures.
can anybody reach up there and catch that thing and just try, but then we're gonna block it. No, I can't do that either.
I'm gonna be
Camera.
get somebody phone.
Who the easel?
I guess I didn't notice that.
How's that?
Is that good enough?
Yep. There you go.
Improv.
Is that good?
All right, could you display the picture, please? Why don't you come on up here, please?
Keep your voices, please.
I will. Just point out, please, where you see April. I'll move. Thank you. And her direction of her head is facing, I mean, I guess the direction of her body is what?
Her head is to the north and her feet are to the south.
And so then the trail would be down here?
Yes.
As you saw that, did you approach and go touch the body, check April? What did you do?
2 EMS personnel, myself, walked to the body. I did not touch it. EMS established whether she was alive or not. They determined that she was deceased. And so we left back to the south to the paved portion of the trail.
Now, while you were in that area, were you able to make some other observations of, well, let me ask you this, how close did you get to her?
A couple feet.
All right. Were you able to see the state of her clothing?
Yes.
Describe it.
Her blouse and bra were pulled down about her waist area. Her blue shorts and undergarments were pulled down to around her ankles.
I'm going to show 2 photographs to you. May I ask if you recognize these? This is going to be People's Proposed 38. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
That's a picture of April.
I'll show you 39. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do. There's also a picture of April, her shorts and undergarments.
All right. Mr. Keith, I'm going to show, I'd move to admit these. Have you seen these also? That's 39. That's 48. So could you display to the jury 38, please? Would you indicate here, if you would, you can use this, extend it out so the jurors in the corners can see, where her undergarments for her torso are in that picture. They're a little bit ways away from it.
This right here is her pink-colored bra. And then this white portion here, along with the sleeves, is her, I guess, shirt.
Did you put her head or her hair in this position at all?
No, I did not.
You didn't touch her?
Not at all.
Could you display 39, please? You indicated earlier her underwear and jeans were pulled down. Is that depicted there?
Yes, sir.
No.
There's her underwear here, and those are her jeans here.
All right. I see bare feet. To your knowledge, did you observe shoes in the area?
There were 2 white shoes to the south of the body.
Can you turn that off for a moment? Thank you. Just don't want to do that. Marking 2 other photographs. You're familiar, aside from responding on this one occasion to the Macomb Orchard Trail, just out below the streets, I guess, of the village, you're familiar with the trail?
Yes, Sam?
I'm going to show you what I have marked as people's proposed 40 and 41. This is 40, and ask you what that is.
This is a north-facing photograph of the crime scene.
And the crime scene, okay, so you recognize that?
Yes.
That's adjacent to the trail facing northbound?
Correct.
And that's at night? If I showed you 41 for contrast?
I can say this photograph is darker than this photograph. I can't tell whether it's at night or during the day. I'm
All
sorry.
right. Do you recognize this as depicting a similar scene?
Yes, I do.
And then move to, I'll show these to council. This is 40, and this is 41. I'll move to admit 40 and 41, Your Honor.
No objection on behalf of the defense, Your Honor.
38. And I'm sorry, can we go back to what's 35, 36, and 39? Did you ask to have those amended yet or no?
I believe he did, and we agreed.
Let's skip 35 to 39.
No, 35 was the trail facing east.
Oh, I didn't move to admit them? I should have moved to admit them.
So you want 35 then to 41 admitted?
Yes,
Any objection?
None at all, Your Honor.
You're all admitted.
thank you. Could you put up 40, which is the darker? Could you point out, please, what you described here?
This is the paved portion of the Orchard Trail. This is a shoulder area, if you will, that the trail has. There's then a ditch in this area here. The ditch then rises up to an area that's approximately level with the trail, and this area here is where the deceased was found.
Just for the record, is that 40 or 41?
That was 40.
That's 40.
That's 40. And this looks pretty close to the edge of the trail, would you agree?
Yes.
How far down approximately is the dip from here down to like the bottom of the ditch?
Approximately 2 feet maybe.
And then the ground, you indicated, sort of rises behind it?
Correct.
Does that comport with the view you saw as the evening progressed that night in terms of the foliage and the trail and the depth and all that?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I'm going to show you a lighter picture. This is people's proposed 41. You've already testified to what that is. Could you display that? This is a daytime or lighter picture.
Correct.
Same scene.
Yes.
Would you be quiet? Mr. Daly, could you just move back just a tad?
Yes.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Could you just again point out for frame of reference the trail edge?
This is the asphalt paved portion of the trail. This is a shoulder on the north side of the trail. This is then the ditch that's approximately 2 feet deep. And this is the other side of the ditch, and this is the area where the body was found.
What was your primary purpose in going out to that scene that night? I know I'm standing next to you, but please tell the jury.
I was a first responder, basically. I was tasked with being the first person there to determine what the scene was and then what to do with it.
After seeing what you saw, what did you do?
Well, first we established that there was no medical need. The person was deceased. So EMS was withdrawn. I then set up a perimeter around the area to secure it as best we could. I was the only Armada officer on scene, so I used fire department personnel to do that.
All right. So you have a perimeter north, south, east, and west?
Correct.
After that, did other law enforcement begin to assist?
Yeah, I asked for additional assistance, so officers from the Macomb County Sheriff's Department came, and also officers from Michigan State Police responded.
Do you know if ultimately also officers, or I should say personnel from the medical examiner's office showed up that night?
Yes, they did.
So there were a number of officers on scene that night and personnel from the medical examiner. How long were you out there that night?
I was out there from the initial call at about 8:19 p.m. I left the scene at 3:05 a.m. the next day.
That last, the photo that I showed you that I suggested looked a little bit darker. Do you recall that being one of the last photos you took that night? Or later photos?
I did take photographs when I left the scene.
All right.
Yes.
Was your purpose in being there to take many photos? Were there evidence technicians there taking additional photos that the jury may later see?
Evidence technicians were called to the scene, specifically the Michigan State Police Evidence Squad came.
All right. Would they have taken more close-up pictures of the injuries and the condition of April's body?
I believe so.
Was that your purpose in being there?
No, not at all.
Okay. So, after you left at about 3 o'clock in the morning that next morning, did you continue to assist in the overall investigation?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall if there was sort of a headquarters, de facto headquarters created?
They established I'm sorry.
I said not even de facto, an actual one.
Yeah, they did establish a command post, if you will, at our police department.
Were tips coming in that next day, the next day, the next day?
Yes.
Were you part of an effort ongoing over the course of days, weeks, and months to work on those tips as assigned?
Yes, I was.
You did not have a part in interviewing Mr. Vancallis in this case, is that correct?
No, I did not.
You didn't seize his motorcycle or anything of that sort?
No, sir.
All right. One moment, Judge. You can stand right there because you might get a question about the pictures. You said you got there at about 8:20, or 8:19, I think you indicated?
Yes.
And you left at about 3 in the morning, or a little after 3 in the morning. Amongst the other personnel responding, you indicated sheriff. Do you recall it? You said the medical examiner's personnel. Do you recall actually Sergeant MacArthur showing up?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall your chief showing up?
Yes, you did.
And your chief is whom?
Howard Smith?
Was there another Armada personnel, police officer who showed up as well?
Yes, Detective Jim Sharp.
Okay. And your chief then, was he part of the decision-making process as the investigation continued?
Yes, he was.
Sergeant MacArthur as well?
Yes, he was.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions. Do you want him to sit down or stand up, Mr. Stroll?
You can sit back.
Go ahead, sir.
Are you going to be using this with the next witness, or? Probably?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just leave it alone. So just basically 2 or 3 quick questions. You were, as you indicated, the first responder on the scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you said that the 2 EMS people approached Ms. Millsap's body to see what her condition was in, did they monitor it with some sort of electronic device, or touch and feel to see if she's cold, or, if you recall, did they?
That I recall, they did not touch the body at all.
So how did they make the determination that she was beyond assistance?
Her injuries were such that there was no visible signs of life, as I would, I guess, phrase it.
Okay. And you know, there's no argument about that, but I'm just curious as to how they determine that. You know, like how sometimes they do a breath test, or they do to see if the person's breathing, or touch them to see if there's a pulse, or if they're cold, or they, I don't want to call it an EKG, but they have something to see if there's activity. You don't recall them doing any of those things, correct?
No, sir, they did not.
Okay. And how long did it take, if you recall, for them to make that determination? You're standing here, the 2 EMS people go up there and come back. Seconds, moments, if you recall?
A few moments.
Okay. And so when you showed up on the scene, anywhere around the body and in that area, did you see any motorcycle tracks?
No, sir.
Okay. And did you see any more blood than what we saw in the pictures here?
No, sir.
So that was an accurate and true depiction of exactly what we saw, correct?
Yes, it was.
That had rain, so no rain would have washed away anything, tracks and/or blood, correct?
Correct.
And for evidence of your subsequent investigation, did you have a chance to see the video at the marathon?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, if I may briefly confer with my client before pressing the witness. Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Very briefly, and this is if you know, to your knowledge, in terms of actually having April declared deceased, do you know that process to be contact made from investigators on the scene to a doctor who's given symptoms and a description, and then a doctor actually makes that pronouncement?
That's correct.
And that's what happened in this case, bless you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You don't pronounce anybody dead?
No.
I don't, that's all I have.
No follow-up. Thank you for the opportunity, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You're excused.
All right, I will call Officer, I'm sorry, I will call Michael Kozlowski to the witness stand, please. He's got my, folder. All right, you have it up there? Stand up right on that side.
Sir, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, sir.
And how do we spell, your first name is Michael?
Yes, sir.
And your last name is spelled?
Kozlowski, K-U-S-L-U-S-K-I.
Okay, please have a seat and speak loudly.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, would you indicate where you're employed?
I'm a forensic scientist with the Michigan State Police Forensic Laboratory.
And where do you work out of? Like, where's your base, home base?
My home base is in the Metropolitan Laboratory in Detroit, but I also serve the Sterling Heights Laboratory as well, which is where I worked out of at the time of this incident.
So you have different assignments at different times, maybe during the course of your career, where you're going to be based out of?
Yes,
All right. How long have you been with the state police?
since 2009.
And do you have some training that helped you achieve this position?
Yes, my primary role is as a firearms examiner and a bloodstain pattern analyst, and I've received training from the state police and from outside agencies in both of those. As far as crime scene, I have a bachelor's degree in applied physics from Wayne State University and a master's degree in forensic science from George Washington University, and I'm board certified in comprehensive criminalistics. I've also received training through the state police in basic evidence technician training school, and I'm taking courses in crime scene reconstruction and crime scene photography.
Crime scene photography, that's why you're here. You took photos on the case that brings us to court?
Yes, sir.
Now, sometimes in your job at the state police, you might do something else in terms of criminal marks or firearms investigations, but you also do forensic photography.
Yes, sir.
On July 24th, 2014, do you recall responding to a scene in Armada on the Macomb Orchard Trail?
Yes, I do.
And what was your job that night?
With two other people to process the crime scene, to document the evidence and collect and package the evidence as well.
Would you describe generally what you saw as you got to the crime scene?
The crime scene was located off of the Macomb Orchard Trail. There were a couple of evidence items that were actually on the trail itself, and then most of the evidence was off of the trail and basically back in the brush or the woods that was, I believe, north of the trail.
Describe the brush and the trail itself in terms of sightline and whether the brush was thick or thin or what was it in general terms?
Certainly. The trail itself is fairly wide. It's probably 8 or 10 feet wide, asphalt, and then there's a gully, or a ditch on the one side that goes down, I would say, 3 or 4 feet. It's fairly steep and it's difficult to cross. And then it goes up again, and the surface at that point is fairly flat. However, it's a very thick brush. There were a lot of small trees, probably an inch in diameter, and it was fairly thick. So for the most part, it was a little bit difficult to get to and to move around in there.
Are there the lights, like you drive down the freeway, there's lights, and some trails may be lit up. Was there artificial lighting along the trail, so when it gets dark out, you can see what you're looking at?
There was no lighting at all. When we arrived, Macomb County Sheriff's Department had a light, a generator-powered light, and then we also brought a couple of floodlights that we connected to our generator as well. But that was the only lighting.
We'll see those in some photographs, correct? Those actual little generators?
Correct. The floodlights are on, I think you'll at least see one, they're on a tripod.
Okay. And describe what you did upon getting to the location. Do you survey the scene first visually, or do you just start snapping pictures, or what are you doing?
Our first duty usually is to do a debriefing with the investigators that are on the scene, which is what we did. By the time we arrived, there were 2 items of evidence that had already been basically marked off so that they wouldn't be damaged. They were on the trail itself. The officers on scene had already observed that there were a couple of shoes that were in the brush off of the trail as well, in addition to the victim. So basically, they gave us a rundown of the evidence that they had observed before we arrived, and then we discussed what we would not be able to do for them.
Were there other personnel working in conjunction with you on the scene from the Michigan State Police who were crime lab personnel?
Yes.
Do you recall an individual by the name of Eric Cernak?
Yes.
Was he out there?
Yes, he was.
In general terms, because he can describe it for himself later in the trial, but what's his job at the State Police?
Eric Cernak is a forensic scientist in the Sterling Heights Laboratory, and he's a trace evidence analyst. And in the State Police, all footwear examination is done by trace evidence analysts. He, like most of the other people who work in our laboratory, are also cross-trained in crime scene processing as well.
So he was out there processing the scene with you?
Yes.
Sergeant Coho, is that another person who was out there?
Yes.
You know, and I didn't ask this question because I called her Sergeant. Some people who work at the crime lab are actually sworn law enforcement personnel. Some are not police officers who are MCOL certified. Are you a police officer?
I'm a civilian scientist.
Okay. Sergeant Coho obviously is a
trooper, right.
sergeant who's a sworn officer.
Correct. We're about 80% civilian and about 20% enlisted.
Okay. I am going to have you step down, and I'm going to move this monitor a little bit, and I'm going to take you through a series of photographs from the crime scene and ask you, by the way, did you have a chance to look at these photographs?
I did.
You're familiar with what's depicted in them?
Yes.
I can go through each one, counsel. I can show them all to you now, or I'm going to move, based on his testimony just now, to admit people's 42, I believe it is that correct?
Yes, that's it.
Through 51. Let me show them all to you?
Yeah, just real quick, please.
There you go.
Yes.
Ideally, it's ready to stand on this side of the microphone, because then I can see you. It's not as
Have him stand on that side of this side? Yeah, I'll have him come right down here.
Thank you, Mr. Dave. And just as you introduce him, just indicate the last line, just so I can distinguish him from my notes.
Okay, I'll give you at least some sort of a...
Anything, just
the results. All right. Could you step down here, please?
So are you admitting these?
I am moving to admit 42 through 51, and I want to display them to the jury.
No, I've reviewed them, and we have no objection.
Okay, they will all be admitted?
I'm going to keep your eyes peeled because I'm going to move this a little bit so you can both still see it.
That's through 51, right?
That's correct.
Maybe if I need to refer to my notes, is that okay?
No, they fit there.
Okay.
Well, he can take his notes and put them in if he'd like. I don't know that he's going to need them or not.
I'll have to go back and get them if I need him to get them.
That's good.
Thanks. I'm going to show you and ask you to display, Mr. Keith, a picture looking into the woods with a generator in the foreground. Can you describe, please, what we're looking at here in this photograph? And I'm going to give you the pointers because I want the juror in the back corner and the judge to be able to see what you're doing. So please point out what you see in this photograph.
This is a view from the trail looking in towards the crime scene. This area right here is the victim. This on the tripod is a floodlight. This is a smaller floodlight that was there when we got to the scene. But basically it's very heavy, very dense with brush.
Craig, could you please using your sanction, could you, in the middle of this, because I want the jury to see where April is in that picture. Did you move her to that position, or any law enforcement personnel, to your knowledge?
No, we did not move her, and it's our practice, we do not manipulate the body at all until the medical examiner or their investigators have the opportunity to see the body in its natural state. Usually after they've done their examination, then we will sometimes have to maybe move something to be able to get better photographs.
All right. Craig, I hope I'm keeping these in the correct order. I have a picture now with 6 in the lower left foreground, a placard. This, for the record, is People's Exhibit 43. Could you display that? What are we seeing here?
This is the victim. Her head was facing north, which is away from the path. Her feet were basically pointing towards the path. This is, I'm not good at judging distances, but she was a little distance back away from the path. What you see, the placard right here, this little tent-shaped piece of plastic, is item L6, and it was a red stain on one of the pieces of one of the little trees, which appeared to be a blood stain at the time.
Could you display that next photograph, please? So we can, and that's what you just described?
Correct. That is item L6.
This is L44, and it's so the last picture, you can sort of see the 6 up there, right?
Sort of see the 6.
All right. Craig, this is going to be a head-to-toe shot, and for the record, this is 45. This is a head-to-toe shot of the entire person. So this is a north-south direction she's facing?
Yes. Her head is facing north. Her feet are facing south, which would be pointing towards the trail. Her underwear and her shorts were pulled down. We found her. The underwear is still between her ankles, and the shorts are on the one side. Her tank top had been either torn or cut on one side and pulled down, and then her bra was basically cut or separated between the 2 cups. And there she was also laying on. There's also, you can see on her forearms, you can see the remnants of some. I have to be honest with you, if it's a sweatshirt, but another article of clothing that was basically primarily underneath her.
Where do you see that? Just so, because you referenced it, I want you to point it out so they can see what you're talking about.
These parts here, these are sleeves to a white garment that was actually underneath her, primarily laying underneath her. It's in some later shots once we actually moved her.
I want to just leave this up here, but I'll ask him a question or two, and I don't want that picture just staring at the jury. Can you black that out for a moment? Thank you. As you were looking at April's body, are you looking for injuries on the body?
Yes, and the injuries and any type of physical evidence that might be on the body as well.
As you visually examined her, did you see injuries that you decided you wanted to document more closely?
Yes.
Where did you see those?
Primarily on her neck and her chin and her face. It was fairly dark, but I was able to see that she had like a pattern of marks. And so I alerted Sergeant Coho and Eric Servanek, who are both footwear examiners, that could potentially be a tread pattern. And so Eric Servanek took over some of the photography, some of the close-up photography of the victim's neck and face, because that's his area of specialty.
Each photo that we see is something that you saw and it's depicted as it was that night?
Yes, and the ones that have a small white scale in them are the ones that Eric Servanek took.
Fair enough, and we may see some of those later. Craig, could you display 46, which is going to be I don't know what you want to call it, a close-up shot. Can you describe, do you see anything in this photo that you just described to the jury?
Yes. I'm talking about areas like this area right here on her skin where there's a regular, I don't want to describe it, they're basically patterns of parallel lines and intersecting lines. And also some of that extended onto the line of her jawline as well. And there's also some, it looks like a pattern on the skin as well.
Can you actually see that down on her jawline in that photo?
In that photo, I can see a little bit of it right here.
Can you see
Clearer
it in the photo?
It's more, yes, it's clearer in the paper photo for sure.
And these are admitted for the jury to look at if they won't look at the paper photos themselves. Craig, could you display the next picture, which is just a similar view but pulled back? This is 47. Do you have a bit of a more clear view of what you were talking about?
Yes, it's just a larger view of the same evidence. I was also, it wasn't just about trying to capture the pattern evidence on her neck and her jaw, but also her head, the blood stains, the fact that her hair was moved to one side. This is just one of a large series of pictures as far around the victim as I could get.
There's probably a lot more photos than we're going to show the jury that were taken, correct?
Yes.
I know you've looked at it, but do you recognize this photo as well?
Yes. This would have been a photo that would have come later on after the medical examiner had the opportunity to examine the victim.
I'm gonna wait and not show that now, because that was taken later in time.
Yes.
All right, I will show that last. Craig, there's a picture with a 4 in the foreground. This is People's Exhibit 49. What is that?
That's a shoe. We found 2 shoes between the trail and the victim. One that was essentially down in the ditch, and then one that was a little bit further up. I'd have to check my notes to see to tell you which was which. One was item number LS3, one is LS4.
Let's show People's 50, which is, there's a 3 in the distance. That's the other shoe?
That's the other shoe, correct.
So the shoes were the shoes thrown past her northbound? Or I shouldn't say thrown. Were they lying past her northbound, southbound, east of her westward? Give them a general direction of where they were.
Essentially, from the trail going northbound, you encountered 2 shoes. One shoe in the ditch, one shoe shortly after that, and then the victim was beyond that.
And then just a closer up of 3, which is People's Exhibit 50. That's actually closer up of the other shoe.
Yes.
And I want now to show this picture, if I could. This was the picture he said was taken later. This is People's Exhibit 48. You recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
This is a picture of the victim's left hand. And, I'm sorry, and there's some debris in her hand, basically leaves material and things like that. I'm not a medical examiner, I can't describe why somebody might have that in their hands, but...
Well, we can talk about later why somebody might look like that.
But essentially, it's, her hand was clutching some leaf material and some debris from the surrounding area.
All right. You can put that down. You can go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. April's body, you've seen some photographs that you've taken. Were there other photographs, and just to be clear, taken of the rest of her body, in terms like her legs, maybe closer up to her feet?
Yes, we tried to document all the way around, and then also document the body, document the body in sections, including palms of hands, the soles of her feet, the tops of her feet, and things like that as well.
To your trained eye, not as a medical examiner, but your forensic photography and as an evidence gathering professional, did you see that pattern mark anywhere other than the I'm going to say from her, above her breasts? Did you see that pattern mark?
We only really saw anything that looked unusual above that, above breasts and above.
All right.
Nothing below that point.
All right, I just want the jury to understand, there's a lot more pictures of her that were taken. That's not all you did.
Correct.
How long were you out here doing your job?
May I refer to my notes?
No, you don't.
Okay. A few hours. A few hours, probably, I would guess maybe 3 or 4 hours.
Okay. Fairly appropriate. All right, thank you very much. One moment, gentlemen. Thank you, officer. You're going to answer some questions from Mr. Sheehan. You're not an officer, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. Just a couple of brief questions. Did you, while you were taking these photographs of the shoes and everything, or while you were out there and the photographs were being taken, did you see any tread marks or any kind of motorcycles? Did you remember taking pictures of any kind of tread marks?
No.
Do you remember seeing any that you may not have photographed?
Pardon me, you're talking about on the trail?
Well, near where the body is, by the trail, between the trail and the body, or?
No, we did not.
Okay. And just if you know for the record, we have one shoe is 3 and I think one is 6. Do you know if one is right and one is left?
One was 3 and 4. One was 3 and 4, yes.
You can refer to your notes.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I just want to be sure. It may not say right and left in my, it describes the shoes as which one was found, where they were found, but no. I don't have the information which was right and left. I mean, we could look at the pictures of the shoes and I could tell you.
Okay, and they were more or less in a line, not next to each other, right? There's one shoe, and there's another shoe, and then there's a body, correct?
They were a few feet apart, but between the trail, the 2 shoes, and the victim, it was a fairly continuous path.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I could briefly confirm. Thank you, sir. Nothing
I
further.
just have one question that relates to People's Exhibit 44.
Have to see those pictures. Keep going, yeah.
This is the bloodstain picture. Was it on the tree bark? Was it on the ground? Where was it? How was it taken?
I'm sorry, thank you for asking. It was vertical. You're looking close up at essentially a branch that was sticking straight up. It was a few inches off of the ground, about 6 inches off of the ground.
Because it's just, I didn't know if it was high up, low, so it was 4 inches about off the ground.
Probably about 6 inches off of the ground.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of, may I ask a follow-up based on just that question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. In terms of that picture here that we just showed the jury on, did you do any follow-up testing, for instance, at the lab that maybe Ms. Summers or Ms. Barilski or somebody else, your colleagues may have further checked into this?
It would have been analyzed by in our biology unit, yes. And that's where, when we get back from the crime scene, our first duty is to basically pass it along to the appropriate units.
Okay, that's all.
Follow up on page. So you said you have some sets of training in blood stain and spatter, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just for sake of our understanding, what's the difference between the splatter and the stain in the scientific field when it comes to blood?
Well, in the field we refer to it's blood stain pattern analysis, but when we're referring to spatters, a spatter is basically a drop of blood that's had some sort of force exerted on it. Could be the force of gravity, but it just could be from some other motion that propels it. It could be from somebody swinging something, from some sort of impact. It could be from someone coughing up blood. There's a number of reasons why blood drops might be essentially propelled through the air. In blood stain pattern analysis, we also encounter a lot of situations where blood is just transferred simply because something is bloody, makes contact with something, and it transfers blood to another surface as well.
And would you please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what cast-off blood stains are?
A cast-off it's a pattern of blood stains. With a cast-off, we refer to it as a cast-off pattern. And we have multiple stains, drops that strike in a linear pattern, basically usually a fairly straight line or maybe a little bit of a curve to it. It gives an indication that there is some sort of a motion. And the classic cast-off pattern is somebody is swinging a weapon or they have their hand but it has enough blood on it. When somebody swings their arm, that there will be drops that will be propelled from that surface. And they tend to strike in a fairly characteristic way that shows the direction they were traveling and can give us information about the motion. But that's referring to a pattern of blood stains.
Okay, and also what's velocity? The velocity has something to do with this, right? If it's medium velocity, low velocity, or high velocity.
In this field, people used to talk a lot about low, medium, and high velocity blood spatter. Really, the field tends to be moving away from that, largely because it's the premise originally was that the more velocity, because velocity and energy are basically related to each other through the, they're basically related to each other. And the more velocity or the more energy that goes into blood, that it would tend to cause it to break down into smaller droplets. And in many cases that does happen. Somebody gets shot, you might produce a mist of blood, really, really small stains. And a lot of ordinary beating events and stabbings and things like that, the drops tend to be in a fairly middle size. And then sometimes when somebody's just bleeding, there's not much energy involved, where gravity is the primary force involved, and they tend to be fairly large, large stains, large splashes of blood. To be honest with you, we tend to not use the term low, medium, and high velocity blood anymore because it can be mimicked by other things, and it's not the type of thing I want to put a distinction on. There's instances where you can get really tiny drops of blood from no force at all, certain incidents that can cause that.
So it's not just the physiology that's changed in terms of low, medium, high velocity, but also the fact that it's somewhat been discredited.
It's the understanding that, yes, it's putting too sharp a point on it.
Okay, so just lack of a better word, it's been discredited by a more advanced science, correct? By understanding...
When you say discredited, sure. Okay, discredited, sure.
Okay. That's fine, whatever word you feel comfortable with. Let me ask you this, given all that you talked about and your knowledge and training about blood, did you try to determine, we know that you had nothing to do with determining whose blood that was, correct?
Correct.
Okay. As far as that blood stain, did you make any determination if it was from transfer, somebody having touched it, if it was cast off, if it was low, medium velocity, if it dripped on, or anything? Did any guidance that you could give the jury at all as to how that stain may have got there, which one of these categories it fit into?
Honestly, I from a single stain like that, I don't think I would venture a conclusion. There's some instances where it would clearly be a transfer pattern, where I could look at something and say, okay, that's definitely something bloody rubbing up against something. But for that particular stain, I don't know if I could say one way or the other.
Okay, would it help you at all to take another picture close up at the stain, or that just...
I've seen it. I know what it looks like.
And just so that while we're still talking about that, there's a difference between if there's a round droplet and that's somewhat eclectic, or like a teardrop drop, correct?
Correct. One thing that happens when blood separates, if you have a drop of blood as it flies through the air, it doesn't. The classic teardrop shape is not what liquids do in real life. In real life, blood, once it's been separated, by gravity or some other motion, it forms a sphere because it's the tightest, most compact shape, and all the molecules are basically attracted to each other. So you're essentially a solid ball of blood. They're usually smaller. But when they hit a surface, if it hits a surface at an angle, it tends to elongate and stretch out. So the stain often is oval-shaped or elongated, and from that we can often surmise the angle of impact.
And that usually helps you determine direction sometimes, correct?
Sometimes. If it has enough detail to it, we can often determine the direction.
Okay, just a couple of brief follow-up questions. In terms of any other, did you find any other stains at that scene other than this one that was photographed?
There were, it was pointed out to me later on that there were some other stains that were closer to the victim's mouth. Is there an observation at the scene?
Is there a reason those weren't photographed that you know of?
They were in the photograph simply by, because of the proximity, but I did not take additional photographs. It was just dark and I just didn't notice them.
Okay, so you didn't see them. They were brought to your attention after the fact? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. When they were brought to your attention after the fact, did you go back to examine them?
The photograph?
No, go back to the scene.
Oh, I'm sorry. They were brought to my attention, but long after the scene had been cleared.
Okay, now, just so that ladies and gentlemen of the jury have a reference point, were those blood stains about the same size, larger, smaller, different type than the one that you did photograph, if you recall?
I don't know. I'd say in the same general size. There was nothing. They weren't mist stains. They weren't large stains that I would associate with splashing.
How far? We've got April's body. This stain, where was it relative to her? Right arm, left arm?
Which stain?
The stain that we're talking about that's in the photograph, where was that stain relative to her body?
It's relative to her right hand,
Okay.
very close to her right
And
hand.
was it parallel to her hand, a little above or below?
Let me think. She's facing north, so it would be a little bit to the west, basically to the right of her right hand.
Okay, would it be parallel to her hand approximately, or was it a little higher, like closer to the shoulder, or a little bit closer
I
to
think
the...
parallel to her right hand, yes.
Okay, and the distance, about
A few inches.
just a few inches, okay. Yes. These other stains that you're talking about, where were they at, relative to Ms. Millsap's body?
Her face was turned to the right, again facing west, and they were a few inches from her mouth.
Okay, were they...
3 inches to the right of her mouth. Her face was, she was facing right, and they were a few inches to the right of her mouth.
And so, I guess she's facing this way, correct? She's facing to her right, and they're near the mouth, correct?
Correct.
And they're just a few inches from there?
Correct.
Okay. And you don't recall if they were bigger or smaller than the stain that you photographed, correct?
They were not especially large or small. Correct.
You don't know anything else about those stains at all?
No.
Okay. Now, given these injuries, and being the expert you are in this area, would you have expected more cast off or more blood from multiple injuries being inflicted upon Ms. Millsap? Would you have expected more blood?
No. That's always a classic question in bloodstain pattern analysis is, why isn't there more blood, or is it possible to commit a crime without getting blood on you? And the reality is that it is possible to commit very serious crimes and not get blood on the assailant or on the surrounding scene. It really depends on the type of injuries that the person has. Gravity has a large effect on it. Also, people can sometimes cough up blood at a scene, so that's one of the things we always take into account. We always look to see is there blood on the victim's teeth or in their mouth, it's visible, and I usually a follow-up question with the medical examiner if there's bloodstain pattern analysis, or could blood have come out of someone's nose. No, honestly, it's not something I would, the lack of evidence in that instance doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay, now, you indicated that this was not far from her mouth. Was it inconsistent with something that may have come out of her mouth, or?
There would be an explanation for it, yeah.
I'm sorry?
It would, expirated blood, basically blood out of the mouth or the nose, would be a valid explanation for that, assuming that she had blood in her airway.
Okay. The manifest word there is we don't know exactly what happened, but in terms of there's nothing inconsistent, right, with being that kind of blood, is what you're saying. You don't know for sure that it was that, but you didn't say anything about it that tells you there's no way that could be explorated blood, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then if you one brief second. Thank you again. Yeah, thank you for picking up on my question. That was very important.
You indicated in response to that line of questioning that blood can be on one surface and transfer to another.
Yes.
And did you see some blood on her face and in her hair?
Yes, there was definitely blood on her face and in her hair.
If somebody took a shoe and was stepping into that, do you think there could be transfer somewhere on that shoe?
When you say transfer, do you mean blood
From the body to something else?
Absolutely. Blood being transferred from the body to the bottom of the shoe? Yes.
Okay. And you indicated the scene as you saw it was not inconsistent with the injuries that you depicted from your forensic training.
Correct.
I don't have anything else.
Follow up, Your Honor? So are you familiar with the Lacard principle?
Yes, I am.
What is that?
Lacard's exchange principle is, the short version is every contact leaves a trace. And the idea is that whenever two items come into contact with each other, that there is the potential for evidence or some sort of pattern to be transferred between them from each item to the other item.
And this principle is not something that's new, that's just come off the internet or Google or something, or Wikipedia. It's been around since, it was a French fellow by the name of Matthew Lacard that...
For over 100 years, yes.
For years, hundreds of years, correct?
Over 100 years, yes.
Over 100 years. And basically what it says is if I come here and you lean on here for a second and go back, some sort of transfer has occurred. Perhaps some stain of DNA is on here, and I may have taken some of the slant varnish, whatever you call this stuff, on me. And that's very, very, very normal, correct?
It is, and it's a limited principle, but it is true. At least in theory, there's always an exchange of material or information between the two surfaces.
And what do you mean limited?
There are reasons why. I mean, the card actually went into this in the wrong version of it, and I can't quote the wrong version, it's in multiple sentences, but essentially, the two things he made note of is retention and detection. It might be too small to detect, and at least in theory, that there's material that transfers. Again, if you lean against the post there, in theory, you transfer a bit of varnish to you, but it might be so small that it can't be detected, or reliably detected. And then the other limit that Ricard talked about was retention. Sometimes things get transferred, but then because the world keeps moving and because other contacts are made, things get lost, or they just decay, or they're just not detected later on, just because they're no longer there.
Okay, let me follow up on that. In that regard, the Ricard principle, which is over 100 years old, is still valid science, correct?
Yes, it's a cornerstone principle.
It's a cornerstone principle of criminology, and in addition to which, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that our mechanics of detection, I'm sure, have improved a lot, but that principle has not changed, correct? In other words, at one time, we almost have to see something to say, okay, somebody touched something, as time goes on, we have DNA, now we have touch DNA, so our method of detecting things that are consistent with the Ricard principle has...
It has, but again, with detection, we talk about reliable detection too, because, as the limit of detection gets smaller, in other words, we can recognize and detect and identify smaller and smaller things. At the same time, the trade-off to that is that you start to discover that the world is actually a filthy place. There's a lot of just fragmentary DNA and dust and other materials that contaminate even what appears to be clean to the naked eye. So there is a trade-off. There's a limit of what you can do with reliable detection.
But using that principle, if somebody's consistently stomping on somebody, you indicated in response to Mr. Daly's question, you would expect some blood on the bottom of their feet, correct?
I say it could transfer, yes.
Could transfer. By the same token, would you not expect maybe some fibers, either from the socks, the shoes of the person, or something to transfer to Ms. Millsap's body or the area nearby?
Say it one more time, please.
Did you also not expect, because that's what the whole Ricard principle is, right? Both things exchange. So you would also expect that something from the assailant would have been left behind, correct?
In other words, you would say, yes, from the assailant to the scene, or anybody at the scene to the scene itself, and from the scene to anybody at the scene would potentially, at least at some point in time, be carried away.
And that's a whole lot of what you do as criminalists, right? Is to looking for things that the assailant left, whatever they are, whether it's sweat DNA. I think we just recently had a case where somebody took a bite of Domino's pizza. They were able to tell from the DNA because he had a prior record, just from that one bite, because the saliva that was left. And also, by the same token, like what the victim may have left somewhere, right? Because if somebody says, I don't know the victim, and you see something of theirs that can be verified that they're home and they're here, then you know that they were there, correct?
That's a large part of what we do, yes. So basically, association is one of the, and in a case like this especially, but association, basically linking things together, is a large part of the job, yes.
And in this particular case, did you find any association between Mr. James Vancallis and Ms. April Millsap, or any indicators of association?
Well, you have to understand that I process the crime scene, so you have to follow up with all the other reports as far as, but...
I'm talking about you, sir. You're here. You did not, correct?
I did not, correct.
Thank you. I mean nothing further.
We'll keep you up here longer than I thought we were. I'm sorry to intrude too a little bit, but I have to ask this then. So you indicated evidence could be lost almost immediately as soon as it's, or evidence or trace of that evidence could be lost almost immediately? Is that
yes,
correct?
it's referred to either as retention or persistence. Some things don't, nothing lasts forever. Everything decays, everything eventually disappears.
Things could be cleaned?
Correct.
Things could be thrown out?
Correct.
Things could be still there, but thrown out and never found?
Correct.
That'd be one way to no longer have that piece of evidence for somebody like you to look at, right?
Correct.
Very briefly, if I may, just exactly those lines. So when you talk about evidence can be lost, and Mr. Daly said a few things could be thrown out, could be here or there, we could speculate all day as to how so-called evidence could not be somewhere, right?
You're correct.
If you had a fortune like Gene Roddenberry, you could give it like his remains, I believe, are sent out in outer space. You could send the evidence in outer space if you had that kind of money, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, by the same token, let's just talk about Ms. Millsap, okay?
Okay.
If She left her home at about 5:30, and her body's found about 8:19 or so. That's when the 911 call comes in, about 3 hours later. I think from the prior witness, there's some indication there's no rain or anything. At least the evidence is there. You don't think that would have gone anywhere in those 3 hours, do you? If there's some exchange between the assailant and her. Let's leave the assailant out of this. This person, whatever happened, is this 3 hours? Do you think that if nobody's been at the scene, nobody's touched anything, in those 3 hours when some of that evidence have disappeared?
I know what you're saying. It was a fairly, we were there in a fairly short time after the scene, which is good. There wasn't raining, there wasn't really windy, it was good environmental conditions-wise. That's definitely part of it. But part of it also is that there are some instances where just evidence doesn't transfer well, and we really can only respond to what we find. The old adage is absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. But I can only really talk about what we found at the scene.
Okay, and I know there's a lot of tragedies that occur where people are missing for a long time. Just today, I think this 2-year-old boy in North Carolina was found that the whole country's been looking for about a week. In this particular instance, when it's 3 hours between the person being well and the person being deceased, it's not a lot of time for, right? For evidence to have disappeared, or for the climate or animals to have changed it, correct?
For environmental conditions, yes, for an outdoor scene, it was pretty good in terms of the preservation of evidence, but that doesn't guarantee that anything will be found.
Okay, thank you, Yanni.
I think we're done. Thank you, you're excused. We'll see you all back at 1:30. Have a great lunch. Please don't talk about the case, listen to anybody talk about the case, read anything about the case. You know the routine.